Prior to 1956, the Olympic Games had exclusively operated in the Northern Hemisphere. When the International Olympic Committee awarded the upcoming Games to a remote city at the bottom of the globe, the international community panicked. Commercial air travel was in infancy. For international teams, reaching Australia meant enduring grueling, multi-day flights with half a dozen layovers. Those who couldn't fly spent weeks cramped aboard ocean liners, struggling to maintain peak physical condition on ship rations. Australia also enforced strict quarantine laws. Any horse entering the country had to be isolated for 6 months, meaning the equestrian events physically could not take place in Melbourne. They were held 5 months earlier in Stockholm, Sweden. The globe was effectively split in half for a single event. To the established global sporting powers, this isolated city appeared entirely unequipped for the scale of a modern competition. They expected an organizational failure. On the ground, the situation was severe. Australia was still recovering from the economic strain of the Second World War. Funding shortages, political disputes, and labor strikes continuously delayed the construction of the Olympic Village and the primary stadiums. The delays became so critical that Avery Brundage, the president of the IOC, flew to Australia to inspect the site. He delivered a clear ultimatum: accelerate the progress immediately, or the Games would be revoked entirely. The local population responded. Residents and workers pooled resources, accelerating the build schedule to finalize the massive Melbourne cricket ground. They managed to finish the venues with barely any time to spare. Just as the city finalized its infrastructure and hung the Olympic banners, external forces overshadowed the local victory. A severe crisis was arriving with the international teams. Weeks before the opening ceremony, the fragile peace of the post-war era began to collapse. Two distinct international conflicts erupted simultaneously, pulling the escalating Cold War directly into the sporting arena. The Soviet Union sent military forces into Hungary to crush a democratic uprising. In protest of the violent suppression, Spain, the Netherlands, and Switzerland entirely withdrew from the Games. At the exact same time, the Suez Crisis broke out in the Middle East, leading to a secondary, entirely separate boycott by Egypt, Iraq, and Lebanon. For the athletes who did arrive in Australia, the Olympic Village became a high-stress environment. Hungarian competitors, watching their homeland fall under foreign control from afar, began actively tearing down Soviet flags from the residential quarters. The organizing committee tried to maintain order, but this concentrated anger needed an outlet. It found one in the swimming pool. The men's water polo semifinal pitted Hungary directly against the Soviet Union. For the Hungarian team, this was a literal proxy war against the occupying force of their nation. The Hungarians employed a tactic of psychological agitation. Because they had been forced to study Russian in their schools, they spent the match hurling verbal insults at the Soviet players in their native language, intending to provoke them into making mistakes. Beneath the surface, the match dissolved into a physical brawl. Players continuously exchanged kicks, scratches, and concealed punches while the referee's attention was drawn elsewhere. With Hungary leading 4-0 in the final minutes, the tension finally broke. Soviet player Valentin Prokopov snapped and delivered a heavy punch directly into the eye of Hungarian star Ervin Zotter. Zotter pulled himself from the pool with blood streaming down his face and into the water. The visceral sight of the injured Hungarian enraged the crowd to the point that police had to intervene to prevent a full-scale spectator riot. The match was immediately called off. Despite the hostilities, the athletic competition carried on, and the results on the scoreboard defied international expectations. The small host nation finished third in the overall medal tally, trailing only the massive populations of the Soviet Union and the United States. This success was heavily concentrated in the water. The Australian swim team completely dismantled the competition, taking gold in every single freestyle event on the Olympic program. Dawn Fraser dominated the 100-meter freestyle. She broke the world record and quickly cemented her status as one of the most capable swimmers the sport had ever seen. The roster was filled with young talent. 18-year-old sprinter Betty Cuthbert secured 3 gold medals on the track, while 17-year-old Murray Rose claimed 3 golds in the pool. This density of high-level performance was calculated. Australian coaches had pioneered modern sports science techniques, such as highly structured interval training and strategic tapering before meets. They had engineered a fitter, faster class of athlete. The defining image of these games, however, occurred after the final medals were awarded. Protocol dictated that athletes marched in the closing ceremony strictly separated by nation, walking directly behind their respective flags in militaristic formation. Days before the ceremony, a young local boy named John Ian Wing sent an anonymous letter to the Olympic organizers proposing a break in that rigid tradition. This diagram illustrates his concept. Rather than marching in isolated national blocks, all the athletes should mingle together and walk as a single unified group. The idea was to physically demonstrate that human connection supersedes political borders. The organizers approved the last-minute change. When the final night arrived, competitors from opposing sides of the Iron Curtain and nations engaged in the Suez conflict walked arm in arm around the stadium track. The gesture completely dissolved the lingering hostility in the stadium. It created a tradition of communal celebration that the International Olympic Committee adopted for every closing ceremony from that day forward. Against all international assumptions, Melbourne bypassed immense logistical hurdles, introduced a scientifically rigorous approach to global athletic training, and provided a brief moment of unity in a fractured era. What do you think is the most intense political or athletic moment in Olympic history? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. The 1956 Games proved that those underestimated by the global establishment, whether a remote, isolated city or a local boy with a simple letter, can leave a permanent mark on the world stage.